Hello, teams. Welcome to training number 3. We're going to talk about evangelism and a lot of great things today. But we're going to start how we always start this training. It's learning a little bit of Portuguese. We're also going to practice some things that we learned on the last training. So, we're gonna start with one of the things that you're gonna hear the most on the boat. It's how you say good morning in Portuguese. And it goes like this: Bom dia. Bom dia. And then after 12 o'clock, you can say boa tarde. Boa tarde. If it's really hard to say that open R, you can say boa tarde. That's okay too. So that's good afternoon. And then in the evening, for good evening and good night, you can say boa noite. Boa noite. Then our next greeting we're gonna learn, it's actually how you engage people in Brazil. If you want to know their name and start a conversation, you can ask them, qual é o seu nome? Qual é o seu nome? Together it's gonna sound like, qual é o seu nome? And that's what's your name. And then you can answer, meu nome é. Not nombre, nome. Meu nome é. And then you can add your first name. Meu nome é Priscila. And that's how you can answer that question. Now, after you met some great people and you're about to leave, or you want to wish them something as you visit them in their homes and you want to tell them, God bless you, you can use the expression Deus. That's the word for God in Portuguese. And it's going to sound like this: Deus te abençoe. You're going to need your notes for that one. Deus te abençoe. And that's how you say God bless you in Portuguese. I know so many of you that have been on trips before with us or getting ready to leave always want to be practicing your Portuguese. And so make sure you check some good apps like Duolingo or Babbel, Google Translate, and also make sure you download your WhatsApp because we're going to be joining the groups very soon for your trip.
Thank you, Priscilla. Of the thousands of pictures that I could use over all the years of going on trips, I've used this one every time we train because it captures the best of what we're about to talk about, and that is the team collection supply list. So your team is going to bring your personal items. We have a personal packing list, but on top of that, if you choose, you can bring some supplies for the villages. And this picture demonstrates the power of doing that. I was with this group and we were having men's ministry. The gentleman to the left there was busy burning shrubs using his edger. He caught a palm tree on fire that was dead, and it was almost an explosion. It was really impressive. You can maybe tell a little bit in the background. It's real smoky, and it's like the Lord was causing the wind to blow all the smoke away. But I've never seen anybody so blatantly try to disrupt what we were doing, but it was like the wind was blowing right and we were all focused, even with his impressive pyrotechnics with exploding a dead palm tree. So we are getting towards the end of the meeting, and the primary use of the men's and women's is the gifts that we give to draw more people to those ministries. I consider men's and women's ministry in the afternoon the most spiritually impactful part of the day. And so one thing we do is we give soccer balls. And so we said, who is the team captain? And they said, well, he is. And they point over the guy making all the commotion. And there he is receiving the balls. Now, what's happening right here is something very impactful. After this gentleman received the balls, the men went and played soccer. And our missionary pastor that was with us said, you know, he always did that kind of thing whenever he was there, that he had never engaged with the team and never played soccer. And there was something about giving this love language gift to this man, soften his heart. And the team even said he was extremely good and took it easy on the team. And it's just the power of bringing relevant gifts for the villages to help with the gospel. And so one of the things on the collections list is going to be soccer balls. So let's talk about the list, but this is a great segue to talk about the supplies we're going to ask you to bring. First of all, where is this list at? If you go to our website, amazonoutreach.org, go to the resources tab, there's a section called Important Team Information, and this is about in the middle of about 20 great documents, personal packing, how to dress, everything that we're going to cover in all of our training is going to be in that Important Team Information link. And one of those is the Village Collection Supply List. So you'll need to know where to find it, that you can bring extra to bring supplies. There are over-the-counter supplies we invite you to bring. But if you're a provider, we also have a formulary down in the medical section of our resources. And if you'd be interested in bringing some prescription drugs, please look at that. We invite that as well, but there'll be a fully stocked pharmacy already there for you. But on the men's and women's list, these are what we use for a hook, pun intended, see the picture there. Funny thing is, the men, if you say, hey, meet us at 2 o'clock in the afternoon for we just like to talk to all the men, you'll get a group to come because they're curious why you're in town. But if you tell them we have fishing hooks, fishing line, sunglasses, and caps, it will double the attendance in the men's ministry. The women, they're a little better about coming just because they're more relational creatures. But even them, if you tell them throughout the day, we've got whatever items you bring and you begin to spread that, it really becomes a great hook to help fuel or funnel more people into the men's and women's ministries. These are, however, completely optional. You don't have to bring them. The villagers aren't expecting them. So, but they are a very effective tool if you choose to bring them. Another thing about the collection supply, it's very difficult to plan these supplies, so don't overthink them. Those of you that probably are going to be over the collection supplies are going to freak out because you're type A and you want everything in order. There are different methods of tracking how many soccer balls, how many hooks, who's bringing sunglasses, whatever your list of supplies you're bringing. Some use Sign Up Genius, others have used Amazon wish list. Others have just used some kind of spreadsheet where everybody puts, but whatever method you choose, no, it's not going to be perfect. And whatever you get to the river with will be great. Don't overthink it. Don't stress. Just do the best you can. Now, this is a very, very rough estimate, and others would probably have different numbers, but I just want to give you something because if you've never done this, I would say a good estimate, you want at least 200 women's bags and 150 men's bags. And this would have, you'll know by looking at the list on the collection supply what would be in those bags. And for men, it would be things like sunglasses, caps, fishing hooks, fishing line, the metal leaders, flashlights, little small pocket knives. So the women's have their own list, but if you can get enough to make 150 men's, 200 women's, you're off to a good start. Don't have that much. You can still make it work by, you may just give for the first 2 villages and the third village, don't give it all, and they will never know the difference. You also need to bring VBS material. There will be stuff on the boat, but do know that if you need it for your crafts, and again, this could be a low number, but you'll need a minimum, I would say, of 50 kids per village, 2 crafts. One in the morning, you'll do a VBS, and then you'll do a different one in the afternoon. And then you just repeat those same lessons in each village over usually typically 4 villages. And one priority item, if you don't bring anything else on the list, we really want to encourage you to bring at least 12 soccer balls because most teams go to 4 villages and we try to give 3 balls per village. These are wonderful gifts that we can give the village, as I've already talked about the difference it made in one village by having, and please make sure they're good soccer balls. Don't buy the cheapest ones. I have had balls bust when we first break them out, and it'd be better not to have them. So size 5, decent quality soccer balls, and then at least 6 pumps, I would say. All right, and then there's going to be supplies that you can also bring for the boat. I'm going to pass it over to Priscilla to share with you some of the supplies that you could bring for the boat.
So the list of boat supplies, we ask you to bring those and collect those as a team because these are items that are not easy to find in Amazon. It's almost likely you can't buy those there. So the first thing would be a small bottle of Lysol concentrate. No, we cannot find those in the Amazon, and those are very useful for triggers. There's something that we're gonna do. We're gonna explain later. So make sure you bring a small bottle of that, and then also duct tape. Believe it or not, hard to find it in the Amazon, and it's very useful for the boat. So are the Sharpie markers. We use those for the collections, for the donations, for the gifts, for the pharmacy. So very useful on the boat as well. A gallon in sandwich and size and gallon size of Ziploc bags, also very useful for VBS and for the pharmacy. Peanut butter and jam, your preferred brand, also not easy to find in Amazon, very useful on the boat for snacks. And a regular size of pancake syrup. Those are also really good for the trip. And then for the last day, we're going to have a fun time, a party. So if you have someone that loves to throw parties, put that person in charge. Make sure you bring some party supplies. It can be as little or simple or as involved as your team would like to make it. And if your team has chosen to do the photo ministry, make sure you have the printer and the paper and all the supplies for that ministry as well.
So now let's talk about how are we going to get all of those items there to the river. And so, talking about luggage, what the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to check out the airlines that your team is using. Again, you can go to managemissions.com. You can log in, using your login that you created when you signed up for the trip, and then look under documents. And so this would be on the trip overview there when you log in. You should see documents, and you can look up your airline information, whether your domestic airline, which, typically is going to be American or United. And then for most teams, it's going to be Copa, but you can look specifically if you're using whatever it is and see what their baggage requirements are, their fees, and all those sorts of things. And so you want to research that. Definitely want to make sure that you understand what needs to go on the plane and what needs to be checked. And so most airlines are going to allow a free carry-on suitcase. They're going to allow a backpack or a personal item. And you just want to make sure that it all complies within their dimensions. You can kind of see an example there on the screen of some dimensions. That's pretty standard right there. But that's for most, really all of your personal items are going to go in your carry-on things. And we'll talk later on in another training about personal packing list and all that sorts of thing. But most of your personal items are going to go into your carry-on luggage. And so depending on the size of your team, we may need most, if not all, of your team members to take a check bag. And that's where all those village supplies that we just talked about, Steve and Priscilla talked about, all the village ministry supplies, men's, women's, VBS, all those things. That's going to go into your checked luggage. And so with Copa, most of our Copa Air contracts that you guys are on will allow each person to take a free check bag up to 50 pounds. And again, there are size dimensions to those as well. So you want to make sure it's not oversized. You want to make sure that when you have your packing parties, which again, we'll talk about, but you want to make sure you weigh those, make sure those bags are no more than 50 pounds because they will charge extra for that. Unfortunately, for our domestic flights, unless you have status, you're probably going to have to pay, and it could be up to $50 for a check bag. And again, if someone has status, I've been on teams before where a person had status and they could take up to 5 or 6, free bags. And so we try to put as many under that person's name as possible. But you'll want to check all this, before your trip and maybe find out who has status, who doesn't. But again, we just don't want you to be surprised if you show up to the airport and check in for your flight on American or United, if you do have to pay for that. And again, especially if it's oversized or if it's overweight. And then for anybody who's not familiar with air travel, any liquids that are 3 ounces or more, those need to go into your check bags. And so that would be your sunscreen, that'd be your shampoos, body wash, any of those types of things do need to go into your checked luggage. And so what teams do sometimes is they may just designate a bag or two for everybody's personal liquids. that need to go into those types of bags. And again, that's up to your team to decide. An individual could maybe pack their village supplies up to 45 pounds and save a little room and a little weight, for their personal liquids that may need to go in there. And so when we talk about luggage, um, if you, again, if you bring a check bag, we are going to encourage you to bring all those village supplies that we talked about before. And so again, you can find that list, on a website, resources, and important team information. You can find that village supply collection list. And again, as a team, Steve mentioned this earlier, but as a team, they do this different ways. You may sign up for Sign Up Genius or Amazon wish list. You guys can decide how you want to do that. But we do encourage you to bring those supplies because those are, as he said, those are the hook that draws people to the ministry opportunities, which is really why we're there. And then regarding the check baggage, whatever piece of suitcase you bring, those bags are often used to haul ministry supplies from the boat up into the village. So our recommendation would not be to bring your best, most favorite piece of luggage because there's a good chance it's going to get a little bit worn and certainly used during that week. If you want to leave that bag on the boat when we're finished, you're certainly welcome to do that. That way you don't have to check it going back home. And so, your team, we talked about the packing party. That's where it's going to be your last meeting before you go to the airport later that week. That's where you're going to bring all the village collection supplies. You're going to divvy those up. We don't want, we'll talk about this later, but you don't want all the VBS stuff in one or two bags because if that bag happens to get lost, now you're in trouble when you get there. So you want to kind of divide and kind of spread out, each ministry supplies amongst several different bags. So worst case scenario, if you lose a bag, you're not totally without once you get to the river. And then there are occasions where our friends at the Bucket Ministry may ask us if we can help carry some filters down. And so if that situation arises, the Bucket Ministry will pay for an individual's check bag fee if they're willing to carry those filters for them. And so the luggage part of this, the air travel part of this, it's quite honestly one of the most difficult parts of this trip, but it's all a means to an end. It's all a means to get there and to be able to share the gospel. And so Priscilla is going to talk to us about evangelism.
As we talk about evangelism and we bridge that into culture, we are going to talk about how you can evangelize people in the villages as you mix that into the culture. So we're going to start by using what you see, using their lifestyle, their culture, and everything that you're going to see around you that, you know, is relevant to their daily lives, like the fishing, the rivers, the agriculture. Soccer is a big deal, cooking, just their lifestyle. And we're going to talk more about culture in depth in the next training. Don't worry about it. But we recommend ask them about their life and about their family. And we're going to bridge into the second point here, which is relationships. Um, Relationship is the base of Brazilian culture. And for them, when you ask them about their family, friends, their kids, this is something that for them shows that you care. So when you ask them that, you can find shared experiences. If you're a mom, if you're a dad, if you have siblings, if you have friends, you can find them, you can make them a bridge to talk about more personal things. And then third is the names. A lot of the village and the villagers have religious names or just a beautiful meaning that you can use as a just a segue to a gospel conversation. So we have villages that are called also beautiful things like beautiful view or good luck, and how you can bridge that into the gospel. And then if you get stuck into the conversation, you don't know where to go, you're always going to have a translator with you, but also you can use the serving friends. And those are who, what, where, why, when. And you can ask things about their daily lives or just their life experience, but also about what they believe about the Bible and about God. And for that, you can also use the diagnostic questions, like what do you think happens after you die? Or what do you believe about the Bible? Or do you think that we're sinful, or that we are born without sin? You can ask questions like that and transition into more of deep questions, into the spiritual questions as well.
As far as diagnostic questions, my favorite is after asking if they think they go to heaven when they die. Most will say, I don't know, hope so. I'll say, well, if you were asked by God, why should I let you in my heaven on the day that you go before him to stand in judgment? What would you say? And the answer to that question reveals what are they trusting in for their salvation. And the most common answer is, I don't know. But usually if they do give an answer, it'll be, well, I'll try to be a good person. And anyway, they're revealing they're trusting in anything other than the answer being the only reason I'd go to heaven is because of the death, resurrection, and the forgiveness I found in Jesus Christ to take away my sins. Anything short of that is not a gospel answer. So thank you, Priscilla, kind of getting us warmed up. But as you break the ice with those questions, try to spend plenty of time getting to know the villagers. One of the most powerful tools you have to take with you to the Amazon is your testimony. There's the gospel of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, but there's also the gospel of Steve, Chad, and Priscilla, and you. And so we want you to bring this tool and be prepared. And a really good way to prepare is to get your story down to 15 seconds. And I know that sounds impossible, but I'm going to show you how to do that because this is going to be the skeleton for you to do your 3-minute testimony. So obviously, if you can get it down to 15 seconds, you can do a 3-minute testimony, and it can really capture the essence of what God's done in your life. So let's talk about how to do the 15-second testimony first. First, here's a simple formula. You can always start out as you begin to share your testimony. There was a time in my life, and I want you to think about your life before Christ and think of a word that would describe it in an emotion word. How do you condense down your life before Christ? And it could be anything from like, well, before there was a time in my life I was depressed. There was a time in my life I had no purpose. There was a time in my life I used to be afraid of going to hell when I died. There was a time in my life when I was suicidal, addicted, struggling. So you think about what life was like before Christ and put that down into a single powerful emotional word. And that's going to give you a start for your story. And then how you came to Christ, the easiest way I know to say it is, then I put my faith in Jesus and begin to follow him. It's not just believing, it's the following too, which is real faith. And so that gets you from my life before Christ to how I came to know him, because you're not going to go in depth. And then you end with my life since Christ. And this is going to match what your life was like before Christ, but it's going to be the counter. So if you could say before there was time in my life I was depressed, I would say at this point, then I put my faith in Jesus, begin to follow him, and now I have hope. Before I was addicted, but I put my faith in Jesus, begin to follow him, and now I have freedom. There was a time I feared going to hell, but I put my faith in him, and now I have the assurance of my salvation. So you don't have to have a dramatic story. I love the Tim Hawkins joke where he says, you hear these powerful testimonies, and he said, I wish I'd been an axe murderer. You could just say, I was religious, and I thought I was going to heaven because I was a good person. But then I put my faith in Jesus, began to follow him, and I understand grace now. So those are powerful ways to put your story into a very condensed version. And one other thing I'll say about it, it can also be just a testimony about what God's done in your life and not just a salvation. For instance, my marriage was a wreck, but I put my faith in Jesus, began to follow him, and he healed our marriage, and we've been together. You fill in the blanks. So let's turn that now into the 3-minute testimony. Now that we got the skeleton, Again, here's the outline that you need to use: my life before Christ, how I came to Christ, and my life since Christ. So I'm going to demonstrate, first of all, my 15-second testimony would be: there was a time in my life I had no purpose and I was fearful of hell, but I put my faith in Jesus, and now I have assurance and purpose in my life through Jesus. So let me now turn that into a 3-minute testimony. Now that I've really thought through my testimony, now we're going to do 3. I don't know, Priscilla or Chad, if you guys want to time me, but I'm going to try to do this. And honestly, I had not had time to practice this in a while, but let's go ahead and go for it. Let me give you a demo of a 3-minute testimony. So there was a time in my life whenever I was fearful of hell. I grew up in a very religious home. I heard hellfire and brimstone every Sunday. If I came home and nobody was home, I was worried, did the rapture happen? Did I miss it? Was I not good enough? And the fear of the Lord was put in my young heart at an early age, but I really loved the Lord. But as I became a young teen, my attention shifted to wanting to be more accepted in what I considered in crowd. That was the cool guys and the best looking girls. And to do that, I felt like I had to compromise what I knew from right and wrong. And over the years of my teen, as I kept getting older, I got into drinking and parties and girls and even some drugs as it just progressed. And just the typical thing that happens as a young adult goes into the world trying to chase happiness. All the while, I would come home from after a night of partying, and I can remember I'd lay in my bed with the room spinning, and my thoughts would go to the question, am I going to go to hell when I die? And I'll never forget one night I was in a club on a Sunday night, which, in a very religious home, on Sunday night you were in church. And there was partying and dancing. And I'll never forget the loneliness I felt in my heart. And I just sensed this is not who I'm supposed to be. And that really began a turning point. And I really believe praying parents and grandparents were part of that. And just the putting in my heart the truth of the gospel. And I began to get a distaste for the party life. And there was this one girl that I dated through my years and just really seemed to have character. And I was attracted to go back to her and start dating again. And we dated a few years, got married. And outwardly, I straightened up a lot. Parties was gone. The girls were definitely gone. But I was still empty. And we call that first year of marriage a marriage from hell, because we loved each other, but we fought, we pushed, we cussed. It was, I don't know how we were going to make it. And I remember it all culminated within the first year of marriage. I was taking a shower, and all of a sudden I just got under conviction about my life, and I fell on my knees and I just cried out, Jesus, please take control of my life. And I got out of that shower and I felt better, but I'd made commitments to the Lord before. In those teen years, I'd go to church, get a conviction, I'd repent. I'm never going to do that again. A week later, I was right back in the same lifestyle, but this time was different. For the first time in my life, I began to read the Bible and it became alive to me. And I just got hungry for it, so much so that my wife said I was becoming a Jesus freak, but she got real used to this Jesus freak because I started treating her different. My love for her changed. I began to have power over my sin, the way I treat her. We'd be in an argument and my heart would just melt in an argument. And I just say, I love you. And I can't explain the transformation that the Word of God and the Holy Spirit began to make in my life. I'll never forget, about 6 months in, I was reading the Bible. And for the first time in my life, I understood I am saved. And that was about almost 40 years ago. I've never doubted my salvation ever since. And since then, I've been now married for 40 years. I've never doubted my salvation, and God has filled my life with wonderful purpose. Now, it's certainly not been perfect. I still battle with sin. I'm still not always the best husband, but I've never doubted my salvation, and I give Jesus Christ and his gospel all the credit for the transformation. And I want to encourage you to put your faith in him as well. That felt a little bit long for some. Did you time it? How long was it? 3:45. 3:45. Oh, well, we teach grace here. So the idea is that would have been twice as long. And so it's very important that you get yours down tight. We will accept 3:45. All right. So here's some best practices in wrapping up with this part of our teaching. Practice, practice, practice. This is the best tool that you have that you're bringing to the Amazon. Some of you have never given your testimony. Some of you, it's way too long and way too meandering. But if you'll do the 15-second testimony and then turn it into the 3 minute, it's going to be a sharp tool. We don't want to bring a dull tool to the Amazon because God's going to use your testimony because your story is going to resonate with those in the village. Keep it real. It's very important that you don't say, I trusted Jesus and then I've never sinned again. And my wife and I never got in an argument and life has been wonderful and perfect. Please don't do that. That's not the truth. We're all broken. We're all works in progress. And we need to keep it real and not make it sound like that you just pray this prayer and your life's going to be perfect because that's not the truth. And we want to be real. Another thing is don't preach. Sometimes when I've been on teams and we ask somebody to give their testimony, and I get it, I'm a preacher. They go quoting scriptures and preaching and teaching and sharing the gospel. When you're asked to share your testimony, please just do that because usually in a service or in an evangelism visit, somebody already is assigned to teach or preach or share the gospel. So just think in terms when you're speaking, you're not trying to win anybody to Christ. You're just telling your story to set up for the person that's probably going to be preaching, unless you're the one doing it. And by the way, if you're ever asked to preach and you don't know what to do, just share your testimony and then you can preach and just share and invite other people to trust Christ. And then lastly, and most importantly, keep the emphasis on what Jesus has done in your life. You can spend the first 2.5 minutes talking about how horrible you were and how sinful you were. And some of us just have more colorful stories than others. But if that's all they hear, we've missed the mark. We want to really focus on the part, what has my life been like since? And what has Jesus done to bring healing to my brokenness and transformation to my sinful life? Because we want it to be at the end that they have a taste and a desire to want to know this Jesus that we know. So be sharp as you can with your testimony. You don't realize it, but you're going to do it. You're going to get called on. So I want you to be ready and prepared. I know it scares many of you. You don't think you can, but it's going to be one of the most emboldening, you know the word I'm trying to say, spiritual growth moments of your life when you do it for the first time, or you do it again, and God's going to use it because you're prepared.
Sharing your testimony is important, obviously. You know, we spend a lot of time on that. I know teams I train, we spend a lot of time practicing that. It's also very important to be prepared to share the gospel. And if you're like me, I like to do a lot of object lessons. I you know, kind of like Priscilla was talking about earlier, I like to use the environment around me, and those are all very good skills, very good practices to use. And so if you need help with some of that, if you need an idea about, you know, I want to use something to share the gospel, you know, whenever I have that opportunity, if you will go again, you're going to get tired of hearing us say this, but if you'll go to our website, go to our resources, we actually have a whole YouTube page that has, you know, tons of video material that you can learn from. And so on our YouTube playlist, you can learn how to use the e-ball. You can see that in the picture there. If you've ever done a salvation bracelet with the colors or anything like that, it's the same concept with the different colors on the ball that someone can go through and explain from sin to salvation. This catches a lot of eyes. You know, we have a video on there where you can learn how to teach the gospel, share the gospel through a machete, using a machete as your object lesson for that. And so that's on our YouTube page. If you go to our website, again, under resources, you can scroll down and find some evangelism tools. And so, you know, there's several there. We won't go in depth into those. I'll let you look those up. But, you know, the e-ball scripts, using an EvangeCube if you've never done that. You know, there's a whole handbook on sharing the gospel, evangelism. Some others that you guys may be familiar with there, you know, the 3 circles, the bridge. We try to make sure that you have every resource that you need, you know, whether it's sharing your testimony or in this case, sharing the gospel. Because as we said earlier, I mean, that is the purpose of all this, all that we do, all the luggage, all the travel, all the logistics, all the supplies. It's all for this purpose to go share the hope and the love of Christ with these people who have little to no access to that. And so, what are the next steps? What do we need to do between now and the next meeting? Okay, well, certainly Be practicing your testimony, just like Steve said. We want to practice, practice, practice. Make sure that we're very comfortable with that. We're very familiar with that, both the 15-second, the 3-minute. Just when you're sitting around the dinner table with your family, your spouse, if you have kids at home, whoever's going on the trip, or even if they're not, just say, hey, tell me your 15-second testimony. Hey, tell me your 3-minute testimony. Practice it. And the more comfortable you are with it, the easier it's going to flow. As Priscilla mentioned earlier, look for the WhatsApp. She creates those and we'll send them out to the team leader to share. So make sure you're on there, especially the closer you get to your trip, the more and more you're going to use that WhatsApp thread as opposed to email or other text thread. It just really kind of keeps that in one place so that you don't miss important information as your trip approaches. Be thinking about what ministry area you want to work in. Listen, if you are the team leader, you don't need to try to be Moses and do everything. There's a reason Jethro told him to delegate some of those responsibilities. Well, if you're the team leader, you need to do the same thing. You need to make sure that you delegate the different ministries, different areas, women's ministry, VBS, men's ministry, delegate some of those things. And so if you are on the team, be praying about it, considering, which areas of ministry you might want to captain, both as a service to your team leader and then ultimately, of course, as a service to those villagers. Be thinking about, how your team wants to collect those supplies, what method you want to use, whether it's Sign Up Genius, whether you want to just enlist different groups in your church, if you want to use an Amazon wish list, but make a plan for that. Those things come together, but not without some of our thought and participation in it. And so figure out how you want to do that. Schedule your packing party. Again, that needs to be the very last meeting that you're going to do before you go to the airport later that week. Typically is when most people would do that. Continue to keep up with your fundraising goals. We have those goals for the amounts that need to be in your accounts. Those are strategically placed there as we consider when we buy plane tickets and so on and so forth. So your attention to that is certainly appreciated. And then again, like Priscilla starts out every meeting practicing your Portuguese. You don't have to be fluent. They don't expect you to be fluent, but you will greatly earn their respect and connection with those folks the more that you try to use their language. And so keep practicing that. Again, we have a list of commonly used words and phrases, conversational words on the website. You can use Duolingo, Google Translate, any of those things. And if you haven't yet, consider going ahead and getting your visa process started, which again, you need to have your passport first. So if you don't have your passport, make sure you're taking care of that. But if you have a valid passport, go ahead and look at getting your visa. And again, it's on the website, amazonoutreach.org. Under resources, you can see a whole section there that is labeled e-visa. Right.
Well, team, we're going to close up our training today. But first, we want to invite you to follow us on social media. If you don't follow us yet, make sure you're following all the trips coming up. And also, that will remind you to pray for us, pray for all the seasons that are coming up and all the great trips we're going to have. But I want to say thank you and obrigada for just taking this time to get trained, to get prepared, to get your heart ready to minister to people in the Amazon. So I'll see you in the next training or on the river. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much. Obrigada.